morning. Welcome to CATEX TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Thursday, October 30th, 2008. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the U.S. It's 3:30 p.m. in London right now. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our AOL Instant Mail address is CATEXTV. On this day in history, in 1998, a massive mudslide caused by the remnants of Hurricane Mitch devastated central Nicaragua, killing at least 2,000 people. Today's birthdays: Grace Slick, the singer from Jefferson Airplane and subsequently Jefferson Starship, is 69 years old. Who would have thought she would have made it to 69? We have two breaking stories. This one just comes in. It's a story coming from Spain. A powerful car bomb exploded a short time ago at a university in Pamplona, Spain, wounding 17 people. No claim of responsibility, but officials believe that it's the Basque separatist group ETA. Apparently the bomb went off in a parking lot at the University of Navarra in Pamplona, Spain. Most of the people injured seem to have been students. A number of other cars in the parking lot were set on fire as well as windows of a classroom building. That's all the information we have on that. Also, Generali released their numbers, I guess, at the end of the European Trading Day, at least in Trieste. Generali came in with third quarter net profit falling 64%, hurt by additional impairment charges related to the ongoing deterioration of financial markets. Net profits for the 3-month period fell to 210 million euros, down from 587 million euros a year earlier. However, the combined ratio at the end of September actually improved by dropping a bit to 95.1% from 95.4% a year earlier. Generali attributes this to its stellar performance in Central and Eastern Europe, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, where results, quote, more than offset weaker activities in Italy, Spain, and France. So, now to our other news. The economy continues to dominate. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up about 78 points now after dipping a little bit yesterday at the close. The American economy suffered its biggest decline since 2001 in the third quarter, ushering in what may be the worst recession in 25 years. Gross domestic product deteriorated at a 0.3% annual pace. This is according to a Commerce Department report released this morning. This is the last major economic data before the U.S. election this coming Tuesday. It also showed that a record 2-decade consumer spending spree has ended last quarter as the credit crunch deepened. According to Ethan Harris, who's the head of economic research at Barclays in New York, the crisis really kicked up in late September. We're going to be looking now at a very unfriendly GDP number in the fourth quarter with a drop of 2 to 4%. The slump last quarter was the biggest since the third quarter of 2001, and it follows a 2.8% growth rate in the previous quarter. Consumer spending dropped at a 3.1% annual pace, the biggest drop since 1980 after President Carter imposed credit controls. There was also a 6.4% decline in the rate of spending on non-durable goods like clothing and food. This is the biggest drop since 1950. Despite all this, a Nobel Economics Prize winner, Robert Mundell, said this morning in Seoul, Korea, that the worst of the economic crisis is over and the American economy is in the recovery phase. Mundell won the 1999 Nobel Prize for Economics. He said there is a need now to consider the possibilities of an Asian currency or an Asian monetary fund. Mr. Mundell was quoted as saying, "The world economy is not in as bad a shape as it appears from the news. The real economy has not collapsed. The worst is behind us." He went on to say that the U.S. growth rate was superb in the first 3 quarters of 2007. There were 2 quarters of nearly zero growth, a severe growth recession. He's a professor of economics at Columbia University in New York. Then he said during the second quarter of 2008, the American growth rate shot up to 3.3%. He was expecting that the growth rate for the third quarter in the September numbers that came out this morning would probably turn out to be about 2%. And of course, the growth rate, in fact, was not a growth rate at all. It was a contraction of 0.3%. So we don't know what Professor Mundell thinks now in light of the actual numbers. Meanwhile, to other news, at least 61 people have been killed in India as a series of bomb blasts have gone through the northeastern part of the country. It's a volatile part of the country. This is the Indian New Year, the Diwali holiday right now. One bomb exploded near the office of the Assam state's top government official. This was the biggest blast. It left bodies and mangled cars and motorcycles strewn across the street. Bystanders were dragging the wounded and dead to cars to take them to hospitals. It's not immediately clear who's responsible for the bombs. At least 61 have been killed, 25 have been injured at least. The largest blast took place a few hundred yards from the Secretariat of the state. This is the building housing the offices of the state's chief minister. Indian TV footage that we looked at showed the firefighters spraying streams of water at charred, twisted cars. The police have told CNN that the police in the state are on high alert and searching for more unexploded bombs. They've imposed a curfew on the whole area. The area actually is an isolated region wedged between Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, and Myanmar, and connected to India only by a thin corridor. The separatists accuse the central government in New Delhi, 1,000 miles away, of exploiting the area's natural resources. More than 10,000 people have died over the past 10 years in separate violence in the area. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the American embassy is closed in Damascus. Tens of thousands of Syrians turned out today for a massive government-orchestrated protest against the deadly American raid in Syria as they crossed the Iraqi border the other day. A mile away, surrounding the American embassy, hundreds of Syrian riot police formed a protective ring around the building. However, the crowds later dispersed peacefully. The troops wearing helmets, armed with batons and shields, took up positions around the building. The Americans have been the recipient of a protest from the Syrian government demanding an apology for Sunday's attack in the eastern border community that Damascus said killed 8 civilians. Syria has threatened to cut off all cooperation on Iraqi border security if there are any more American raids. There's been no formal acknowledgement of the raid from the government in Washington, but American officials speaking on condition of anonymity have said the target of the raid was a top al-Qaeda figure who operated a network of smuggling fighters into the war-torn countries. In California early this morning, there were a series of small earthquakes in the sparsely populated desert area of Ocotillo Wells, about 65 miles northeast of San Diego. If you can see it on this map, those are those little yellow squares. The USGS said that the 5 quakes had a magnitude of roughly 3.0 to 3.5. One was a 3.6. They all occurred within 3 hours. Swarms of earthquake are typical in this area and continue for a few days. The seismologists are saying it's impossible to know if the peak quake has come or if it will come in the beginning, the middle, or the end of the series. In Illinois, in the southern part of the state, yesterday an oil well exploded, killing 2 workers and injuring 4 others. The explosion occurred about 10 a.m. Central Time as workers from Mason Well Servicing in Grayville were cementing a finished well west of Crossville, Illinois, and gas from the well ignited. The 4 injured workers were taken by helicopter to hospitals. The American Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration have sent investigators to the scene. Hundreds of small independent oil companies operate in the region. The Illinois Basin, encompassing parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky, produces about 10 million barrels of oil annually. Speaking of oil, ExxonMobil, the world's biggest oil company, said that third quarter profit increased 58%. As record oil prices more than made up for the largest decline in production in at least a decade. Net income rose to $14.8 million. This is up from $9.4 million a year area. The Irving, Texas-based company said that per share profit, excluding such items as a gain on a pipeline sale, was $2.59 a share, which is 18 cents above what analysts were expecting. Some analysts are saying that Exxon's CEO Rex Tillerson's run of record earnings may now be over, though. He's led ExxonMobil to 9 of the 15 largest quarterly profits in American history. The reason they think it's over is, of course,